What if the real secret to leadership isn't scale, it's purpose? This week on the next interview, Dolan White talks with Chris Hill, the founder who left investment banking to build a global, purpose-driven travel empire. If you've ever wondered how to turn meaning into momentum and profit, this is the conversation you don't want to miss.
Welcome to the Next Interview Show podcast. I'm Dolan White, the host of the podcast, as the announcer mentioned on the way through the front door. And I'm always honored to be able to talk to leaders, and particularly today, talking with Chris Hill. And we're going to talk about global leadership and his transition and career. I'm kind of fascinated by from where he was to where he is today. And I'm not going to try to tell your story, Chris, but before we get started, I just, more than anything, I want to extend some gratitude to you. I know we were just talking before we hit go, and it's 8 a.m. for you. It's noon for me, although it's 8 a.m. for you tomorrow. So you can tell me what the rest of my day looks like before we're done here. And just want to tell you, thank you for taking time. You could be doing a lot of other stuff and coming to hang out with me and share your lessons and experiences with leaders. I am grateful for that. So thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you, Dolan. I reflect back that gratitude to you. It's an honor and a privilege to be here, and I can tell you that the future's bright for you for tomorrow.
Good. That's good. It'll be a great rest of the day.
That's right.
And thank you. I love that. So I know I've got a little bit of, always just the research is a little bit of your bio, but if you wouldn't mind, the guests that haven't met you yet, and let's maybe just take a handful of minutes, and just kind of talk about your journey, because I think you've got a fascinating journey, and I got questions about that already teed up that I want to ask you. But if you'd like to just share a little bit about what brought you to where you are, what you do, and we'll go from there.
Okay, let's see where we end up.
Yeah, exactly.
I studied at college. I did a law degree and a business degree, and was actually all set to become a lawyer.
Wow.
Had accepted a job with one of the leading law firms, and had also got them to agree for me to travel for about 9 months before starting working for them. And my thinking at the time was, I'll get travel out of my system. I'll see the world in 9 months, and then I'll settle down and become a lawyer and raise a family and all that, get my quarter acre and that sort of thing.
Sure. Yeah.
And then I accepted that job going into my final year of college. So still have that 1 year to go. And in the course of that final year, I won a scholarship from one of the British investment banks called BZW, which is part of Barclays Bank.
Interesting.
And had some conversations with them, and they end up saying, can we send your resume to London, because they're hiring there? And I thought, yeah, sure, send it off. Without thinking too much about it.
Yeah.
But then in the course of that 9 months of travels, so fast forwarding, to the next year.
Sure.
I got to London and there was electricity in the air, and super exciting city. And I thought, wow, this is a great place, and I would love to spend some time here.
Sure.
And so I had some interviews, and utterly shocked that I got offered the job, because everyone there was Oxford or Cambridge graduates who I got the impression they would sell their grandmother for the job that they had. And I utterly shocked, but they did offer it to me, and I thought, well, if I don't take it, I'll probably always regret it. So I did, and at that point I didn't even have a visa to live or work in England. So I had to go back to New Zealand and apply for an ancestral visa, because I did have a Scottish grandparent, and so I could get a 4-year visa thanks to him.
Sure.
But I hadn't wasn't on my radar that, prior to that. So I hadn't applied for it. But at that point I did. So went back to New Zealand, applied for it. And then, moved to London. And this was in 96. So I moved to London. Yeah.
Yeah.
And went into investment banking, which I did for 6 years in London. And then in that 6 years, so 2002, I took a trip to South Africa. And on that trip, in addition to going on safari and exploring the wonders of the winelands and Cape Town and places like that, I also helped to build a house for a family in one of the townships, the slum area just outside of Cape Town.
Sure.
And this just enriched the whole travel experience for me in two main ways. One, in contrast to all that travel I'd done in that year, in that sort of gap year between college and work.
Right.
In this situation, I actually got to engage with the local people and hear their stories and gain insights into their lives. And then secondly, it felt great to actually make a difference in the life of the family that we were helping build alongside. And so I got thinking, well, I've learned some good business skills. Why don't I put into something I'd find a bit more meaningful and fulfilling and make it easy for others to have experiences similar to what I've just had. And so that was the genesis for what became the travel company, the first travel company I set up, called Hands Up Holidays. And so just what happened next was I ended up later resigning that year and taking a year out and doing some more study. I actually moved to Vancouver, Canada, and studied there for a year. And that's where this idea really took root for me, of setting up a travel concept that combined luxury with still a vacation, but with an element of giving back through hands-on service projects.
Sure.
And then ended up spending the next 2 years, so 2004 and 5, traveling the world and building relationships with different communities around the world. Before we launched, actually back in London in 2006. And should I keep going as to sort of get us to the present day, Dolan?
No, it's good, because I think that we'll kind of come back to it, because I'm curious. Let's go for another minute or so or two on this, because I'm fascinated by it. There's a reason why, and we'll come back to this arc of what you've done in your career and in your life.
Okay, sure. So I launched with that, and right at that point, the demographic that I was targeting was sort of people like myself at the time, so young professionals, 25 to 35-year-olds, cash rich, time poor, who wanted to have a great vacation, but also wanted to make a difference. And we did get bookings from them, but more than that, and what really struck me was we were getting bookings from families, and families were not on my radar at all when I was setting this up, and it just didn't even occur to me that they'd be interested in booking with us. So I'd ask them that, and they'd say things like, our kids come from pretty privileged backgrounds and we really want them to appreciate just how fortunate they are. Or they'd say, we're looking for a great family bonding experience and this nails it for us. And that resonated with me, and it resonates even more so now that I do have children of my own. And so we started to shift that messaging, not exclusively, but certainly primarily to focus on that family audience, which has been a real blast. And I should add as well that even though we launched in the UK, right from 2006, it's been Americans that have been our clients by far the lion's share. Sort of 90% of our clients are American, and I think it's because it's in your DNA, really. To want to help and give back, and so that's been a core part of our offering is the American audience, and then really quickly fast forwarding, I launched a few other brands to sort of target slightly different, somewhat very different audiences. Firstly, a B2B, a corporate offering, same concept of a trip for corporates, for employees, that
Sure.
like an incentive trip where staff will go and still do all the amazing things you do on an incentive trip, but they might also
Right.
do a team building activity, which could be, say, building a classroom at a school, for example. And then the next one was one focusing on schools. Again, same concept, not the luxury end, but same concept for school
Sure.
groups. And then much more recently, I launched another one in the consumer space, not focused on families, and it's also so an extension of Hands Up Holidays, and it's called Impact Destinations. And the idea with that one is that it's a traveler's philanthropic donation, which will unlock a unique experience for the traveler, and at the same time enable the experts in that destination to do what they do best. So, for example, that could be coming back to South Africa, say on a safari day, guests can witness a rhino relocation from a reserve that's facing a lot of poaching to a better protected reserve in Botswana. So this is where the guests actually get into the helicopter with the veterinarian while he's darting the rhino, and then land and spend some time with a sedated rhino before seeing it airlifted off to Botswana.
Wow.
And so that's really about leaving a legacy and being able to say, I saved the life of a rhino whilst on safari.
Sure. Wow. That's amazing. So it's interesting to me because it's and kind of going all the way back to the beginning of your conversation. And I loved your idea of that within a short window of time you were going to go see the world, and having, it took me 30 years, I think, to kind of get through 15, 16 countries. I mean, it's a lot to get through in that period of time. And, but I'm really, especially when you were in London, and I'm very familiar with Barclays and worked with Barclays before, so I understand the culture of Barclays and the organization. And I'm fascinated, Chris, because of the shift from, in finance in Barclays, and Barclays is conservative, very British conservative kind of an organization, to that shift to beginning then to look at travel and what can I do differently and where can I make an impact. And there's kind of two threads there, right? There's the one thread where you can be a Barclays, and to your point, they would have sold their grandmother for that opportunity that you had, because it's consistent. And I have friends at Barclays, and they have been there forever and will not leave ever unless they're asked to leave. So I'm really kind of curious about, I think one of the things that leaders, it's easy to get stuck in your life and not kind of step through that door into a new opportunity. I call it the kind of that gateway to fear, right? That door of fear, right? As your step, because you don't know what's going to happen when you do those. So when you were in that mode where you were making that shift, long preamble to the question, sorry.
That's all good.
When you were making that shift, from the finance world in London, which is a great city, into the world where now you're traveling and you're working with families, and you're doing the things that you're starting to do, the things that, you're getting introduced to what you're doing today. What was that like, kind of from a mindset perspective? Because part of you had to be wondering if part of you was thinking, what am I doing? And part of you is thinking, your kids are not up. I would imagine that they probably can't. I don't know how old your kids are. I'll just say they think, what the hell am I doing? I won't use any other words. But kind of what was that like? And then how did you kind of get through that thinking process?
That is a great question, Dolan. I think for me, that experience in South Africa just spoke to me so strongly to my core. And I'm a Christian as well. And for me, it felt like this is my calling. And so I think that, combined with also the the flesh, saying
Sure.
it can still be like a calculated risk for me.
Right.
In that, I wasn't married at the time. I didn't have a mortgage to worry about, so I could give it a go. And if it
Right.
all went south, then I could pick myself up again and get a regular job. And so it was that, I think, combined feeling of, actually, I do feel this is my calling, this is where I should be, but
Sure.
also combined with, to the outside eye, it could look really crazy, but it's still, to me, it was a calculated risk as well.
So how do you, when you're, so it's an interesting point, Chris, because I think one of the things that um, we, there are points. I think there are people out there, leaders that get stuck in this place where they just accept it. I'm going to accept my life. I'm going to get up and I'm going to go, and I'm not going to step into my passion. Right. As you were doing this, and a lot of times, I tend to think sometimes we don't know what our passion is until we step into it, and we kind of go, "Hey,
Yeah.
this is really cool." Um, there's speaking of being Christian, there's a thing that I have taught. I teach my clients, and I've taught my sons. I raised 5 boys. Speaking of kids, now they're
Wow.
making grandbabies for me, which is wonderful. Um,
Yeah.
But one of the things we've always talked about is, we make all these wonderful, great plans and great detail and things that we're going to go do. And we go, I've got my plan. And then God laughs at us. And
Sure.
it's
Absolutely.
another plan. So when you're as that leader and you're kind of looking at, they feel stuck and kind of in this thing that I do every day. How do you, or do you have any advice or any insights or wisdom around how do you recognize your passion? How do you step out and
Mm.
find your passion?
Mm. Yeah. Um, I think, you know, I definitely don't have all the answers or a definitive answer there, but my
Yeah.
gut sense is that, one, it can be bootstrapped in terms of, it definitely doesn't have to be binary in terms of, I'm doing this and then I've got to throw that in
Great
and
point.
do, like I did, and go full tilt into something else.
Sure.
You can absolutely, um, moonlight, so to speak, and then use that time, and this is speaking, from a privileged position. I'm not saying that everyone necessarily has time, particularly if they do have kids, and
Yeah.
then just try to put it on the table. But if you can just eke out a little bit of time for yourself to just explore something that something that's piqued your interest. It might be, something podcast you've listened to, or it might be a just some hobby that you do love, that just, I don't know, maybe also this is a stream of consciousness right now, but
Yeah. No. It's all good.
chuck it into ChatGPT and see, I love golf, and what opportunities might there be for me to, what niche opportunities could there be in the golf market? Who knows?
Right.
But just eke out, and maybe use AI, that can maybe accelerate the, or accentuate that small time you might have available to use profitably, and rather than doom scrolling, use it for something productive to explore opportunities, and just use those little bite-sized chunks you might get to see if something takes hold. I don't know.
I love that, and I think you leaders, as you're listening to the podcast, I would go back and listen to that a little bit, because one of the couple of things that you and I warned you at the beginning. This is a stream of consciousness podcast. We just go. There's no.
Yeah, I love it.
That's how we do it. But I love your comment, Chris, just around. It's not so much. It's not a binary thing. It's not all in. It doesn't have to be all in. It can be just taste. Go try it. Just go see what it's like and see if that's really where your passion is. And I think when people get to discover their passion, you find a way. Doors open. There's a way
Yeah,
that
that's true.
happens.
Yeah, yeah.
So is your one of the things that, and thank you for that, by the way, that was a really, really nice insight. One of the things that I'm kind of curious about is, I know that, with the organization, the bit that I've read and understand about it, which is not at depth, but there's a lot of moving parts to do what you do, right?
Mm. Yep.
And I think one of the things that, and probably the kind of the corollary in any business, if we just look at it as a business, there's always moving parts inside of a business. And one of the things that a leader can struggle with is that synchronicity, that ability to keep all of the, I used to tell my managers all the time, keep the plates spinning. If you think of the magician spinning all the plates. So how do you manage kind of that balance between vision and people outside of your area that you're relying on to keep kind of that synchronicity and keep trust and kind of keep that vision in alignment so that experience is consistent at the other end? Because I would imagine you're not there for all the trips that people go on.
It would be a little weird if I was. Yeah.
Yeah. So just
Yeah.
how do you kind of keep it all going?
Mm. Yeah, well, you spoke about vision, and a key part of vision is values, and so
Okay.
it's yeah, one of my key roles is the beat the drum for the values and the vision, and so
Yeah.
it becomes like a mantra, really, and so that helps be the lens for hiring, and then also the lens for retaining staff, and once people do get the buy-in to the vision and values, the job is so much easier, and that synchronicity, I don't know, well, you take giant steps towards making that synchronicity a lot easier to accomplish.
So how do you, when you're doing it, I love what you're talking about, because I think that's a challenge, I think, in businesses. People tend to, there's a propensity for people to want to hire for the job, which is an I need kind of a hire. I need, and so it's push rather than I got to get this done, kind of a, frenetic kind of way to go about hiring. How do you, when you're going through that process, how do you, first of all, how do you share the values with them? And kind of what does that look like? Because I think that would be helpful to leaders. And then how can you tell they got it?
Mm. Yeah, well, the sharing is the easy part. It's just verbalizing it. But yeah, you're right. Well, the trick is understanding if they've got it, and for that, then listening comes is key, which is a key leadership skill, is to be able to listen to exactly what the client's saying, and it's not just with the ears; it's also with listening with the eyes, and seeing what the body language is like from the person.
Yeah,
and then I guess as well, it's an art and a science, and so combine over 20 years of doing it now as well, you can. It's a case of looking for the cues and looking for that spark in the eye of the person as well,
right.
And so these things cumulatively help with ideally over a period of time, identify those the ones that are going to be the right fit for us.
Sure. Yeah, I think I think it's really interesting, because I think one of the challenges, and in particularly, the cues used to be easier, I think, than they are today, because we're doing a lot of this over Zoom, right? So a lot of this, or
Yes.
other platforms, not to give my old Mr. Yuan, Eric is the CEO of Zoom, Mr. Eric Yuan, give him I'll give him a shameless plug. There you go, Eric. Although we're not on Zoom today, if you watch the podcast, dude. So when I think there's that challenge there, right? Because when we're doing those interviews, it's like, I'm not, how do I confirm I know you've got it? So when you're and I would imagine in your organization, and I apologize because I don't know the answer to this. I should have known this coming into the podcast. It's a global team. So you've got people kind of all over the place in areas where you're going, plus continuing to build new relationships with different destinations and places you can take people. So you're kind of got, I would imagine, Chris, you've got, I'll call it a colloquialism, American, a double whammy, right? So you've got to worry about your team, plus the teams that are in place in the other locations. So,
Yeah.
So how do you balance that? Because those people who are in your organization, you have access to their heart, their inspiration, their commitment to the vision and values. Those that are in other organizations, you don't have access to that all the time because they're owned by a different place.
Well, you're right, Dolan. And it is a real challenge, and so that becomes a very high trust environment, and an environment where relationships are absolutely key. And so I've spent a lot of time in finding the right partners around the world who do get our vision and values sufficiently, and that requires face-to-face meetings. But even then, I mean, they're the people that I'm relating with. I can meet their guides as well, but that doesn't necessarily mean that guide is going to be available on that for that particular trip necessarily. So it is a really high trust environment that they are going to be consistently working with the level of guides that we're familiar with.
Right.
But even then, you've got hotel staff that we have absolutely no control over, really, other than the trust that we put in, say, for example, the Four Seasons, for example.
Okay.
But it's still it's a risk because a receptionist or let's say it's a receptionist at the Four Seasons at the end of someone's trip could really spoil a fantastic trip that they've just had.
True.
And so it is a risk, but it's we do the best we can to mitigate it by working with the partners that do have the highest standards of excellence, do buy into that. Well, at least we share the vision and values even, and then it's in that situation, as I said, it's around risk mitigation for that customer experience, because that's what we're all about is delivering amazing customer experiences, but to an extent it's out of our control.
I love that, kid, because there is that part, and I think it's consistent in all businesses. There's a piece, and even with those who are in your team, it's really kind of at the end of the day all out of your control. The business would be so much easier if there weren't any other people, so just would be a lot easier. But I think it's there's a definition that I use inside of business that any organization is merely a collection of people in a relationship, and relationships can have all these. I mean, we see it in families and with our friends. There's moments of turmoil, and it could be that way in any organization. So when you're kind of working with your team, and they know, they understand the values and understand the vision, and as they're working towards it, how do you balance? Because you're in a high. You can correct me if I phrase this wrong. You won't hurt my feelings if you do. but you're in a very high touch, high experience, high quality experience business, right?
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
that's your commitment from a values perspective.
Yeah.
That and which is if we do this and you go with us, this is gonna be an experience you want to do time and time and time again, which engenders loyalty and all kinds of other things with it.
Word of mouth. Yeah, yeah.
So when you're doing that, how do you balance? I guess there's probably no other way to say it, Chris, other than how do you balance, purpose and profitability? So how do you keep it?
Oh.
How do you keep that scale in balance, right? Because you got to be profitable. Because if you're not profitable, you can't do good things for your people and for other people and for your family, right? That's the measure of money. So how do you kind of keep that balance, right, with purpose and profitability?
Yeah. Well, I think putting it slightly on its head, that I think having the purpose is it's our USP, our unique selling point as well.
Sure.
And so by having that, um, by incorporating an element of purpose into each trip, i.e., you're making a difference on a trip,
Right.
then it's magnetic for people, and so that makes us profitable because people are attracted to that concept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I certainly don't consider them as opposing, and
good.
very much as complementary.
Yeah. I think that's a very cool statement. To leaders, if you're listening to this on your phone or device somewhere, there's a little circle that says 30 seconds. Push that and go backwards and listen to what Chris just said, because I think that's really important, because I think a lot of organizations separate the two. And there's an intention where there's a path where they're focused on profitability and a path where they're focused on purpose. And if they're out of alignment, you can't actually get to either one successfully.
Yeah, and I think that probably can speak as well if the purpose part might just be window dressing, rather than at the core of what you do. And then it might just be then either a cost, or leave a sour taste in customers' mouths so they don't return. I'm speculating here, but
Sure.
maybe that's why.
Yeah. I think that's interesting, because I think when those two are out of sync, when purpose and profitability, I think for me personally, my vision is, purpose drives profitability. Purpose has to be the number one thing. Everything else comes after that. So the one thing I made a note on, I want to go back and just kind of touch on, and because I appreciated your comment, and you said it just very briefly in passing about kids, right? And I'm not going to interrogate you about how many kids and how old they are. We'll do that off camera. But I did want to come back to kind of explore that, because I think there's something very important there. One of the things that when I talk to leaders and work with execs in what I do, I talk about work-life balance, and that there is actually no such thing. There's only life. And family's part of it, work is part of it, relationships is part of it, spirituality is part of it. There's all these pieces, that health is part of it. There's all these pieces that go into this bucket called life. And one of I kind of made me want to come back and kind of say, first of all, I wanted to just give you a tip of the hat as one dad to another, just to acknowledge you for that statement, for your statement around the importance of family, and those relationships. So it leads me to my other statement, which is, how do you keep balance, right? Because you're running a high impact business that has a global presence, that's also doing good things for other people. You've got a B2B component, you've got a schools component. How do you keep your balance?
Yeah. It's not easy, definitely.
Yeah,
but I think for me, I mean, when you, like, for instance, when you spoke about that, first and foremost, purpose, or purpose is first and foremost in a business. For me, um, family and faith are first and foremost for me. And so it's just the case of being rigid rigid in the sense of
Sure.
disciplined, to carve out the time for both of those things as the priorities. And I point there because we have scheduled time. I call it special time with the kids.
Awesome.
And that's a not negotiable. And then
Great
for
word.
me, morning devotions as well.
Right.
Not negotiable. So that's how really just. And I think that just helps keep me grounded also, and then everything sort of flows from that.
Sure. I think that's really important. And I think leaders, as you're listening to this, in other episodes, you may have heard me say this before, but Chris, I love that you touch on non-negotiables. It's like those are, and it goes back to values too. Those are the immovable parts of the values that you're just not willing to sacrifice.
Yeah.
Won't sacrifice worship, won't sacrifice time with the kids, and those become the things that keep us grounded. And successful kind of in our own path. So I guess, I mentioned to you kind of at the beginning of the podcast, we would never be able to go a half hour. We're well past half hour now. So I thought maybe we'll go just a couple other things and then we'll wrap up. So you can get off in your day. So, one of the things that I saw in the research that I've done is as a company, as a team, your organization, you have you have amazing retention. Clients, employees, I mean, the reputation of the business that's a core component of your business. And again, another tip of the hat, because retention is hard to do. So I think one of the things that people struggle with, leaders in turn, when I'm using the term people, right? There's a challenge with retaining clients. There's a challenge with retaining talent. There's a challenge with, all of that stuff, intermingling those. And I think values plays a part of it, but there's acts, there's things that we do as humans to make that happen. So I'm just kind of curious about any insights you could share with a leader around, hey, look, here are important things. If you're going to think about retention, here are things you should be thinking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think other than, and we've spoken about the values, for me, sure, it would be, we always try and surprise and delight our clients. It is a value as well, but it's part of our business model. So things in a trip that aren't they aren't even mentioned in the itinerary, to the unexpected, and there might be just complimentary massages for the parents, or a bottle of champagne on arrival, or whatever the case may be. And we try and do a deep dive into the clients and find out what they're interested in as well, so we can tailor that, give them a surprise that's specific to their interests.
Right.
So I think that helps with loyalty and retention. When you do take the time to truly understand the client and deliver above and beyond what their expectations are.
Right.
And then I also think we're quite blessed to actually be focused on that family market in particular, because it's because kids, you can travel a lot with them, and particularly in the sort of the sweet spot, I would say from like 10 to 15.
Right.
We've seen a lot of retention in those ages because they see the parents see the impact on their kids, so they want to keep doing it, and they like to explore new locations as well.
Sure.
And so that's been a blast, combined with even when the kids, once you get a good amount of repeat clients, then they become lifelong clients. So even when they're empty nested, they travel with us as well. So if you get them young, I guess the cigarette guys like to do that as well. Yes, we're sort of that similar sort of model.
Yeah. Philip Morris, the old Philip Morris thing. Get them young.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that for a while. I'm sorry to crack up, but I love that. That's awesome. No, it's funny you mentioned that, because with it's I have a multi-generational family, right? So now I'm 72 and my kids have all grown, and we've got a 19-year-old grandson, a 10-year-old grandson, and then they go way down, 4-year-old granddaughter, and they kind of go down from there. But it's fun because I see that, where we would travel with our kids, and there was a gap where my wife and I would travel and do things from an experience perspective when it was just us as empty nesters. And now we're in that other end where now we're traveling with the 10-year-old, and we're going with him.
Absolutely.
And we're actually trying to sometimes ditch them so we get to go spend time. My wife and I just get to be alone. So after 40 years, we still like that, which is, I'm always surprised that she still likes to hang out with me. So I think it's really important, but there's a couple of nuggets in there that I want to pull out for leaders as you're listening to this, and predict that you were talking about, Chris, which is surprise and delight, which is get to know your clients and do something for them that they didn't expect. And if there's free massages, I'm going. Just let's be clear. But I really like that idea around when you really truly do understand your client. You're no longer delivering a commodity, something that they could get in other places. You're delivering something that they can only get with you.
Yeah.
And that in turn creates retention. That's a big secret. That's a good secret. So you should bottle that. Somewhere you got to bottle that. So I think probably the last thing that I'll ask you about, and then we'll wrap the podcast up, is the types of clients. Not every experience, not every business is for everybody. So the types of clients that your organization that you guys like to work with, and that should be coming to you, because that'll all be in the show notes and all of that. But I think it's really important for people to kind of go, what, this is something I should go explore. So you mentioned families, and what does that mean? And then kind of business, it's a bigger question, but what does that look like for people and the kind of clients that should be spending time with you guys?
Yeah. Well, we spoke about families, and just to dig down a little deeper into that, it tends to be, families with higher net worth.
Sure.
And that's really because our model of impact is what I describe as philanthro volunteering, in that it's the funds that our clients bring, which is that's the benefit that they bring, and that's to if it's, say it's in the case of a house being built, then it's the funds to pay for the materials, but also to employ local people to do most of the work. And then the clients come and spend a few days on the project, which is the finishing touches really, and still overseen by local experts. So you certainly don't need any skills. And that's where the magic happens for the client. That's where, like what happened for me in South Africa, where you get to interact with the locals and share some laughs with them, and just gain insights into their lives. And so it's through having the means to be able to do that. And so that tends to put you into the the higher income bracket.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sure.
So there's that. And then for impact destinations, it could be families again, but we tend to find it tends to be a bit of an older demographic.
Oh, interesting.
People who thinking around leaving a legacy and
Sure.
and wanting to do that. But we get individuals, we get couples, and this is across both those brands. Groups of friends, girlfriend getaways as well we've had, and honeymooners also. So there's no one particular age group or demographic. And I should add, even though yes, we're at the luxury end and the price points are sort of higher than a mass market vacation,
Sure.
I'm so passionate about this that I do my utmost to work within anyone's budget.
Sure. Well, I think that's important. It's funny because, and thank you for that explanation. And I think it's funny because my wife and I were just talking about a trip to Italy next year. She's Italian and Irish. I'm not sure she's a fan of me when I talk. I always talk about her on my podcast. I don't know, and she's from Chicago. So basically, I'm afraid of her. But we were talking about a trip to Italy, and to your point, one of the things that there was a budget trip, and then there was a not so budget trip. And what attracted to me was the not so budget trip, and primarily because there were more insights and more white glove touch, more concierge like experience. Felt more like I would really like to go do that. I'm at a place in my life where the budget trips with the kids to Disneyland, I'm almost done with those. So now it's just grandkids. So I appreciate your insights there. I would encourage in the show notes, and I didn't tell you this before we started, Chris. I don't say like, so how people get a hold of you. In the show notes will be the links to Chris, to his business, to the website, so that you have an opportunity to go see it. Likely I do that because if someone is driving, I don't want you trying to write stuff down while you're driving. Focus on the road. We'll get you there. It'll be in the show notes. Podcast is on every platform known to man, so you can find them easily. And if not, come to my website and they'll be there. Probably the last thing, just one last topic, and then we'll go. I fib. That was supposed to be the last topic, and this is kind of the last topic. I want to go back to one word from you of encouragement. If a leader is stuck and they're looking to seek their life's purpose, is there just an insight that you would tell them? What would you tell them? To go, at least go look.
Yeah, I would again. This is a mass generalization, and I've more or less said it earlier. But
yeah,
be disciplined about taking the time. If you're really serious about finding your purpose, then put away that phone for 15 minutes in terms of your social media, and carve out a little bit of time to explore.
Good point. Very good point. All right. We told you there's no elegant way out other than we're done. So I want a couple of things. I'll remind the listeners the links and contact information for Chris will be on the nextinterview.com website. There's a guest page there, guest community. When the podcast airs, it'll all be there. So you'll be able to see Chris's picture and go get information and get the links to reach out to Chris. I'll encourage you to do that. I encourage you as a listener to do two things. The very first thing is stay and study. Continue to listen to content and meet other people and hear what they have to say. Chris, there have been some really, really good insights from you today for leaders that apply to life and apply to business. So thank you for those insights. And leaders, the other thing that I recommend all the time is don't do what I did, which is early in my career, I spent a lot of my time not stepping away, not going and hanging with my family, not in sacrifice of that mythological, but if I do one more day in business, I can do this, and there's an outcome. There is a weight that occurs with your health, your family, all of those kinds of relationships. Step away, relax, enjoy it, find good ways to do it. And you can do it at a high scale, a low scale, but do take time to step away and put your phone down. I agree with you on that. That's my favorite statement around my house. Put your phone down. So I'm going to end with some gratitude. Chris, thank you for coming and hanging out. It's 9 now, and almost 9:00 now for you. So in New Zealand. So your day is going. So thank you for being here again, and thank you for sharing insights with the leaders. Grateful for you, sir.
It's been a blast, Dolan. Thanks so much for asking such insightful questions.
Yeah, you're welcome. It was a lot of fun. All right, leaders, 2 things. I see this every podcast. The very first thing is, whatever platform you're listening to the podcast on, give it a like, share, or follow. It has nothing to do with building vanity numbers. It has to do with podcasts that have comments, like, share, or follow, are visible in how all of the tech companies rank podcasts. That visibility means that other leaders can see it, and we can help other leaders progress in their path. The second part of that is, if you know a leader who can learn something today from the insights that Chris shared, share this podcast with them. Just send them a note and say, hey, you need to listen to this podcast. Help them become better leaders, better people in their relationships, better parents. Give them the opportunity to go do that. And for that, tell them don't put their phone down. So on that note, I'll wrap the podcast up. Thank you, Chris, for being here, and grateful for you, sir. I had a great time. Great conversation.
Yeah, it was so much fun. Thanks, Donald.
Thank you.